Holding everything together is costing you more than you realize. And you didn't become absent in this way by accident. You became absent because you were rewarded for it. Because many of us have confused survival with sustainability. If your life only works when you're overextended, is it actually working? Holding everything together is costing you more than you realize. It's costing you your ability to actually experience your own life. You're around the people you love, but you're not really with them. You finish entire days and barely even remember what happened. You're working incredibly hard to build a life, but you're not actually living inside of what you're creating. And that's the real loss. Not productivity, not ambition, and not output. The loss is presence because you're building a life that you're too stretched thin to actually experience. And it's important to say that you're not lazy, you're not ungrateful, and you're not doing your life wrong. You're just never fully at rest. Because even when you sit down, you're still mentally scanning for what needs to be done next. And when you rest, you're anticipating getting back to work. And even when nothing is happening, you still feel on edge. So you don't relax, you don't pause, and then you return to the chaos. And that constant sense of returning over and over is what's stealing your presence. It's not one dramatic event and it's not crisis. It's just constant responsibility. And when you live inside of constant responsibility long enough, you stop inhabiting your own life and you start managing it instead of living it. And if this already feels uncomfortably accurate, I want you to lock in. Because this channel exists for Black women who are done living inside of lives that they barely get to experience. So I invite you to subscribe, not for motivation, not for productivity, but for clarity. Because once you see what's happening, you can finally stop mistaking absence as normal. Now let's talk about why this is happening. This is something that many of us experience, but rarely gets talked about with clarity and precision. And I want to make sure to make a distinction here because we're not talking about burnout. We're talking about where you are positioned within your own life. Because more often than not, your life has been organized around holding things together and not fully being inside it. And that type of maintenance doesn't build presence. It consumes it. And when your role is to stabilize everything, then you don't get to experience much of anything at all. You become essential, but never centered. You're responsible, but rarely experience restoration. You're highly needed, but rarely supported. And over time, that position starts to feel normal. And that's the real danger. And you didn't become absent in this way by accident. You became absent because you were rewarded for it. The more you handled, the more you were praised. The more you absorbed, the more you were respected. And the more you endured quietly, the safer you felt. And slowly, your ability to disappear into responsibility became your value. Not your joy, not your curiosity, not your softness, but your endurance. And endurance doesn't require presence. It requires performance. And from that place, you don't need to be fully connected to keep things running. You just need to be functional. And functionality is cheaper than freedom. And that's why this experience can feel so confusing. Because on paper, you look accomplished, responsible, and mature. But inside, you feel stretched thin, untethered, and half there. And that's not weakness. It's just what happens when your life is organized around what you can carry instead of who you are. And if your value is attached to how much you feel like you can hold, then of course you feel like you can't put anything down. So there's a reason you don't stop. And it's not because you love carrying everything on your shoulders. It's because stopping feels dangerous. If you pull back, what happens to the bills? If you slow down, who's going to fill the gaps? If you stop holding everything together, does everything fall apart? For many of us, this isn't a preference. It feels like survival. And you're not overworking just because you're ambitious. You're overworking because it feels like the only way to keep your life intact. It can feel like the only way to maintain stability, to support the people you love, and a sense of security. And even if you know that this pace is costing you, what is the alternative? Because it doesn't seem like there is one. Because you can't just opt out and you can't disappear. You can't just stop being the one who makes it work. Because your role isn't just effort. It's security, it's identity, and it's how everything stays together. So you stay in motion. And you're not really in motion because it fulfills you. You're staying in motion because it feels like the only thing that's keeping everything from collapsing. And when survival and identity fuse like that, even imagining a different order feels unrealistic. And this is the part that most women don't know how to navigate. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And clarity without structure can feel destabilizing. That's why I created a simple orientation map. It walks you through where your energy is actually being pulled, what's keeping you overextended, and where you can reclaim space without collapsing your life. It's not about doing more. It's about stopping that silent drift away from your own life. It's free, and I've linked it below in the description of this video. Use it in those moments where you feel overwhelmed and unsteady. Because again, awareness without direction can become overwhelming. And we're not creating more stress here. And I think it's important to acknowledge that you're not wrong for holding everything together. You learned early that stability is safety. And that if you keep things running, everyone is protected. And that if you don't drop the ball, nothing falls apart. And that logic makes sense, especially if you've seen what happens when everything does fall apart. But here's a distinction that we rarely make. Holding everything together is not the same as being secure. Because if everything depends on you never pausing, never being soft, and never stepping back, then it isn't stability. That's pressure disguised as safety. And pressure feels stable until you're the one who cracks. And the fear isn't irrational. I get it. You're afraid that if you stop, everything will fall apart. But what you're actually afraid of is losing control over outcomes. And that fear has trained you to believe that your constant effort is the only thing preventing disaster. But ask yourself this: if your life only works when you're overextended, is it actually working? Because many of us have confused survival with sustainability, and they are not the same thing. Survival keeps you afloat. Sustainability lets you breathe. And right now, you're surviving something that was supposed to feel like freedom. And that's the fracture. It's not weakness, it's not ambition, and it's not lack of discipline. However, it is misplaced loyalty. You're loyal to a structure that gives you responsibility and not restoration. And you've been told that that is strength. But strength without recovery is erosion. And we're not talking about quitting. We're talking about this. If your life cannot survive you being centered in it, then it was never secure to begin with. And that's hard to sit with because it means what you've been protecting may not actually be protecting you. And that's the reframe. Again, let me make this clear. You don't have to quit your life and you don't have to burn everything down, but you do have to notice something. You're not supposed to feel like a background character in your own existence. If entire seasons of your life feels blurry, if you're around the people you love but rarely feel present, if you're building something that you barely have the time to inhabit, that's not success. That's overextension becoming normalized. And normal doesn't always mean healthy. So the question isn't whether you can keep holding everything together. You can. You've already proven that. The real question is this the version of your life that you're willing to keep experiencing? Survival will keep you functional, but it will not give you your life back. And you deserve to live inside of the life that you're working so hard to maintain. If something in this felt uncomfortably familiar, then I invite you to stay close to this space. This conversation is about returning home to yourself, not through collapse, but through clarity. So remember, Black women first.